Hey, this is Dan Fogler. You're listening to Cinik Radio.
Hey there, I'm Greg Nicotero.
Hi, my name is Coleman Domingo.
Hi, I'm Benai Garcia.
Hi, I am Mo Collins.
Hi, I'm Chad L. Coleman, Tyrese from The Walking Dead, and Cuddy from The Wire, and you are listening to the Cinik Radio Podcast. Here are your hosts, Cinik, Igrihe, and Ryan.
And this is episode 100 of the Cinik Radio Podcast, and I'm your host and still in disbelief that we managed to do 100 of these, Cinik. And joining me as always, my co-hosts and hetero life mates, Igrihe and Ryan. And on this week's show, I get to talk to one of my favorites. I get the pleasure of sitting down and interviewing Mr. Dan Fogler, star of AMC's The Walking Dead, and one of my favorite movies of all time, Fanboys. We also review the mid-season premiere of The Walking Dead entitled Adaptation, because we are the CRP. Like, listen, subscribe, but more importantly, friends never refer to it as a garage when they know it's a carriage house. Enjoy the show. My guest today is an actor, a voiceover artist, a filmmaker, a playwright, a graphic novelist, a stand-up comedian, and a musician. Jesus. He can be seen and heard in such great projects as Kung Fu Panda, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, and the epic Fanboys, and was just recently cast on AMC's The Walking Dead. Dan Fogler, welcome to the program.
How you doing, brother? Nice to be here. Nice for my voice to be here.
Absolutely. And welcome back, by the way. It's my understanding you were just traveling through Asia. How was the trip, and was it a holiday, or were you working?
It was a little everything, but it was this show that I'm working on, this docu, I guess it's called a docu-series, and it's called Story of Masters, and got into martial arts for exercise, and then a buddy of mine said, hey, you want to host this show? And then suddenly I found myself out in Japan and South Korea and China, meeting with all these different martial arts masters, interviewing them, training a little bit with them, and it was just like a really amazing experience, man. I don't know, do you do martial arts at all, or do you watch like MMA or anything?
I'm a huge UFC fan, and I've done some Muay Thai and some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Great. Yeah, man. All right. So I was basically... So you ever sparred with anybody?
I have.
Yeah. So I just started getting into that, you know. So basically I was just doing it for exercise, and then I just really got into it. And, I just got swept off along this crazy journey, and it should be out in the spring.
Where will it be on? Where will we be able to see it?
Right now in Asia, and then once they get a pilot together, they're going to see who in America wants it. I think the Smithsonian Channel is interested. We'll see, man. I think it's gold. You know, it has legs because, as they say in the biz, I think that people are going to dig it because it's funny and it's heartfelt, and you learn about martial arts, and it's like a spiritual journey. It's got something for everybody. So we'll see what happens with it. But, I'm just having a good time working on it.
Well, and that's the most important part, having fun when you go into work. It makes it a hell of a lot easier to go in every day, right?
Oh, yeah. That's my motto. That's what I try to live by. That if I'm not having a good time, I try to make myself have a good time.
I saw the Instagram post about it, and I was interested right away. I'm like, what is he working on out there? So I for one, will tune into it because I've seen a good portion of your work, and I enjoy everything that you've done so far. But let me hit you with the go-to question that I ask all you talented types. What drew you to acting, Dan? And at what point did you say, this is going to be my career?
What drew me to it? It was kind of like, when you're in high school and you're trying to figure out, like, what's my thing? I was always a class clown, and I was doing the school plays, and I just got a lot of attention doing that. And then I did some sports, but I would just get injured like really early on in the season for like not even during a game. I would always get like injured before the game doing some like stupid flip or something, for friends. And then it was like the universe is telling me, get into acting, man. And so I just stuck with acting in high school, and as far as my grades went, it was also the universe were just like, yeah, stick with acting, you know. And then I was like, shit, man, this is really the only. It's like either this or nothing. I decided, okay, I'm just going to go all in on this and go to acting college, and I went to BU. I knew, like, really early on I wanted to be an entertainer somehow, so I tried all sorts of stuff. I just basically just emulated all my heroes and just tried to do what they did. And then, yeah, that's it, man. I just basically tried everything. I got out of college and I did a little stand-up, and I did improv, and I made my own stuff with my friends. I just kept at it until I got some attention.
It's kind of amazing about school, too. You do it in class, you get detention. You do it on stage, you get applause, right?
Yeah, basically. But here's the other thing, is that if you do it well enough in class, then you don't get detention. Yeah. So that's where you really hone your skills, where you can, like, entertain the class while entertaining the teacher, and you know, and then everybody's happy.
What always surprises me when I do my research for these interviews is how many hats you wear on a fairly regular basis. You learn these things. It's like, wow, Dan's a writer, he's a director, he's an actor. What's it like to be involved in every part of the creative process, and is there one that you prefer more than any other?
I love acting. Like, that's like my number one. I really enjoy it, because I think it's the closest thing to playing, basically, you know, playing outside when you were a kid, imagining you were somebody somewhere, and it's basically the same thing. So I really enjoy that. And I did other things out of necessity. Like I directed the movies that I directed because I had a lull, you know, in my career. So I was like, shit, man, I gotta make something for myself as a vehicle to just keep on putting stuff out there. So I really enjoyed directing a lot. I really was very happy making my first movie, Hysterical Psycho, where I felt it was like just a really fun, creative endeavor. And I got all my friends together. It was like, I felt like I was in summer camp. I was just so happy. I had a smile on my face the whole time. But I don't know if I would want to be the director all the time, but what it did was give me a real appreciation for the director, because an actor, you get to wake up, you know, and early, and you go to work, and you're there for whatever all day, and then you get to go home and you know, think about it, and then when you're done with the shoot, you're basically done with it, you know. But the director, yeah. The director is with it like months before, is steering the ship during, and then is with it months afterward, delivering, you know, the baby, essentially. And it's such like an intense job. And so that when I come to set, I just have a real appreciation for what the director has to do. And then if you have a good director who's actually calm and can keep their head, steering an enormous ship like that, is just so much respect for that person.
It's kind of like if you put it in sports parameters, you're the general manager, you're the coach, and you're the player all at the same time, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. You're as a director, you are talking to every single department. Everybody's looking to you to answer questions about everything. I mean, like, you have to have so much endurance, and you just have to surround yourself with an amazing team in order to just get by. I look at each endeavor. It's kind of like it's fun, you know, if you fantasize about it and you think of it as like, it's like a ship's journey, you know. We're all getting on this, ship, and yeah, maybe some of the planks are rickety, but you know, she's seaworthy, and you know, and then you hope that everyone comes back alive. Essentially, you hope that you can get out there and you can plunder the seas and you can come back with gold. And everything stays together, and you hope that you don't get sunk. And that's what it feels like every time you set off. You like have just a lot of trust in all the people around you. Like, all right, we're in this together. let's all try to come back alive, shall we?
What would you say is the one piece of work that you've done that isn't mainstream that you would like everybody to see?
The one thing I've done in the mainstream that I'd like everybody to see, well, I think the work that I'm doing right now in my life, I'm very proud of. Fantastic Beasts and The Walking Dead. I feel like as a character actor, they say you do your best work when you get to your late 30s and you have some kids and stuff. So that's where I'm at right now. I feel very good about what I'm doing. If you want to go back and look at some older stuff, I did a movie called Take Me Home Tonight, which was a hell of, probably on the top of the list, is one of the most fun experiences I ever had making a movie. And that's got an all-star cast in it, great ensemble, and that was like my tribute to John Belushi. Like if you watch that movie, I'm really doing an homage to him. And then there's another movie called Fanboys, which is an homage to Star Wars and everything wonderful.
We're getting there.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I'd say, check that stuff out if you're listening and you're interested.
So you tore it up in the mid to late 2000s, starring in Good Luck Chuck, Balls of Fury, Kung Fu Panda. By the time you even appeared on my radar as the lovable Hutch in the epic geek anthem Fanboys, which, by the way, I think is one of the most timeless movies ever. If I remember correctly, that movie was a bit of a labor of love and experienced its share of difficulties getting to the big screen, right?
Oh, my God. Fanboys? Yeah, man. That was... Also, Take Me Home Tonight. Both those movies were a lesson in how studios have so many cooks in the kitchen, and like it's just a miracle how any of this stuff gets made, man. Like Fanboys is very special in the sense that most of the producers on that movie have been ousted from Hollywood recently. So, oh no! Yeah, it's a very volatile movie, man. I mean, you had many people involved, including Weinstein, and that became a whole thing that became because there was a moment during the making of the movie where, Linus, the character Linus in the movie, he's dying of cancer, and it's basically the catalyst for the whole adventure. The reason that all these guys who were once childhood friends, the reason they get back together is to give this guy one last, hurrah. And if you and the Weinstein was like, yeah, no, that's too dark. So they wanted to take that out of the movie. So his version, which was like basically Linus coughing every once in a while, and then us wreaking havoc and destroying property for no reason throughout the whole rest of the movie. He basically ripped the heart out of the movie, and then was dubbed by fans to be Darth Weinstein, right? And then, which was amazing, the fans really took back the movie from Weinstein, which is like unheard of. The fans were like, "Man, you have taken the heart out of this movie, put it back in," and they demanded the movie that they originally got, and that's basically what happened. That was a real lesson in egos and that was Kyle Newman's baby, and wow, they just put him through the ringer. That was a crazy scenario, and it was crazy because it was a labor of love. We made it because it was an homage to all the things we grew up on that we loved, and then it was put through the cheese grater.
Which is really surprising. It's an unfortunate situation because the people around Weinstein, most notably Kevin Smith, who stuck up for the guy on many occasions. And it's odd to hear you say that because he described Harvey in the beginning as basically just letting you do your thing, letting Quentin and letting Kevin Smith just kind of go off on their own and make the movies they want. And with this, it sounds like he kind of just gave it a lobotomy every chance he got.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think that in the beginning he was. I mean, I don't want to swim through that psychology, but I think that yeah, as time went on, he wanted to put his stamp on everything, and especially I think that it was the idea was like get it in the can, but once it was in the editing room, that's when a lot of the unneeded surgery would happen on the films. And then, it was crazy about Weinstein is so many people, you watch the Oscars over the years. I don't know, how many producers, I don't think there are many producers out there that were thanked as many times as Harvey was. So his influence was huge in the arts. Obviously, his taste in a lot of sense, as far as the arts go, was impeccable. But unfortunately, he was a monster in a lot of ways. And then on the other hand, the other producer on Fanboys was Kevin Spacey. So that was Trigger Street, man. I learned a lot of lessons from that movie. A lot of Hollywood lessons, as far as people who are 1 minute they're in total control and power, and then the next minute they're nothing.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate, but it looks like we're going to have to break a few colossal eggs to get things correct, right? We're going to make the omelet one way or the other. Hollywood's going to try to straighten itself out, and unfortunately, a few people aren't going to be there when it gets done. Now, my next question is going to sound a little bit cliche, but talking to you now, following your career, listening to your podcast, how much of Dan did you bring to Hutch back then? I mean, not the aimless slacker living in his mom's garage, but the high energy, kind of marching to the beat of his own drummer type guy that you are.
Hutch was a reawakening for my inner child again. Like, I basically, and we were asked to just get in touch with who we were in high school, essentially. Like we were basically playing those characters. So I was playing myself with the dial turned up, and the immaturity level turned up. I guess the maturity turned down. I feel like Hutch would be me in an alternate universe for sure, if acting didn't work out, and then I was just like, damn it, I'm just gonna go full on into comic books and start collecting. I collected as a kid comic books and toys and all sorts, Star Wars and G.I. Joes, and I love that stuff. And then I went to college, and I had to pay rent, and that was like a huge wake-up call. I was like, man, I got to be like a man now. And I literally sold off pieces of my childhood, pieces of my comic book collection and Star Wars collection to pay rent. And that was really, really gut-wrenchingly hard to do every time, saying goodbye to those items. And so when I was allowed to revisit that again, and it was okay again to buy comic books, and we were like basically like, yes, we want you, like, go. Like, it was so fun during the making of that movie, because we would all be in that mindset of, yeah, we're collectors. So we'd go to toy stores, we'd go to comic book stores all the time, and just cover our trailers with posters from. Basically, I had all the same posters I had as a kid when I was in high school, all over the walls of my trailer, and it was just an invitation to be a kid again. And then after that movie, I started collecting comic books again. It was just really, I had money in my pocket again, so I was able to do it, and it was really nice to do that movie, man. I really liked doing it because, like I said, it felt like I was a kid again.
That's really great. I went through something similar too. When I moved out, the house was too small. I got into a relationship with someone with a daughter, so she needed her own room, and I had to give all my stuff that I'd collected over the years away. And I've since moved into a bigger house and started collecting again. So it's fun to kind of go back and recapture some of that stuff, and to have a space to put it and the money to buy it.
Yeah, it's nice to look forward to. Wednesdays, new comic book day. That's it.
Oh yeah.
It's nice.
We're the biggest fans on the show. Every time there's a movie out, anything comic book related, it's straight to the theaters for all of us, and we review the hell out of it. And I mean, you can't ask. As heart-wrenching as the loss of the Marvel properties are on Netflix, because they were pretty good shows. I mean, really good on the Daredevil and Punisher level, but there's some really good comic book stuff going on right now as far as cinema. I mean, we couldn't ask for anything better, and it just seems like it keeps getting better. I don't know how Marvel keeps doing it, but I mean, Black Panther and Captain Marvel look better than Iron Man did way back in the day, even though Iron Man was absolutely amazing. I don't know how they're on this streak, but they take characters that you don't think that you're really going to care about. A perfect example is Doctor Strange, and they made it into somebody really, really watchable, and I would stand in line for the sequel today if I had to.
Yeah, for me, like, it was cinched, I guess, in, which one was it? Was it Civil War? The one where Spider-Man was introduced, and the new one. It was Civil War. And they're all fighting at the airport?
Yep.
I was like, oh my God, they did it. They somehow managed to make the comic book come to life, and they were able to synchronize all that action, and that's where it was solidified for me. And they got all the personalities right. That's where I was like, wow, they, take my money, please.
So I was super excited to see you cast as Luke on The Walking Dead. It's a character a lot like Hutch with a lot of meat and bones and depth. Were you a fan of the comic pre-casting? And what can we expect in the back half of the season?
Yeah. I collected, or still collect, the Walking Dead comic book from the beginning, and I just knew that it was going to be something special, and so to be a comic book fan and then to be able to play a character that exists is just like so cool for me. Like, I'm in Magnus group, which is so cool. We're the newbies. We come in, and they're trying to figure out where we are going to land, basically. So we visited Alexandria, we visited Hilltop, and they're basically trying to see if we're worthy enough to incorporate into their separate villages, And then we have this new outside threat. The walkers are acting strangely. I mean, I don't know how much I can go into, but...
Okay, well, let's just hit on Luke real quick, and then I'll let you go. I know a lot of people find him interesting in his refusal to be changed by the end of the world, and he doesn't believe in hiding behind bravado. He kind of considers himself lucky. What are your thoughts on Luke as a character?
I think he's really lovely. Who he reminds me of? He reminds me of Robin Williams in Dead Poets Society. Like, how Robin Williams was just like, yes, science is important and math is important, and these things help us to live. But poetry and art and painting, these are the things that we live for. He gives these like amazing, heartfelt. They really wrote these amazing speeches for Luke where he just talks about very timely themes, like how instead of warring, we should see the common threads that we have together, and how art is so important for us to because it's what brings us together, and love is the most powerful thing in the universe. Like he's such a sweet character that I just really enjoy playing him. He's also a badass. Like the fact that he's able to survive during this time is impressive, I think.
There are talented actors and there are actors who are talented, and I think Dan fits both those categories. The kind of guy that'll never hawk you a trick, but will always steal every scene he's in. Dan Fogler, thanks for being here.
Oh, wow. That was nice, man. That was good. Thank you.
The show opens up where we left off on the mid-season finale. Jesus is still gone, the new menace is anything but a phantom, and Ryan is still squinting at his TV and wondering how he ever got talked into doing a podcast with two chuckleheads that like The Walking Dead. IG, would you say the Whisperer's greatest asset is their strategic disadvantage they put their opponents at? Or is it the fact that they score off the charts at Father Gabriel levels as far as creepy?
Man, I think it's probably a little from both, because they are creepy as all get out. And even kind of seeing some of them unmasked, some of the way that the one that they unmasked later in the episode acted still creeped me out. So I think that they have the creep on lockdown. But really strategically, the fact that they just move around with herds and they just end up there. You can end up anywhere you want with little to no effort. And you really, they found a way to expose them, but it just was still a difficult thing to do. And if you have enough whisperers together with a large enough herd, that method that they did use in this episode would not be all that effective.
Well, let's take a second and put it real world terminology. Ryan, you do a lot of sparring. Now, you know that when you spar with somebody enough, you learn their movements, you learn the way that they're going to attack, and then suddenly they threw in a wrinkle into their game. How does that affect you mentally when you know what you're expecting going into it?
It definitely makes you second guess yourself and makes you think twice about any of your moves. So I think in this way it's a huge advantage for them, I guess, in combat situations, for the Whisperers in kind of combat situations, because they kind of caught them off guard, and it forces them to rethink their approach anytime they see a walker. On the other side, though, I still think it's like I'm interested in finding out more about how they're able to survive, because it just seems so impractical to me, like as a survival method. Like, how do you food, shelter, what happens when there are people attacking walkers? There's just so many parts to that I'm curious to see how they make their lives work as these kind of roaming, fake walkers.
Yeah, the logistics of it is a little confusing. They said they don't have walls. What if you want to break off from the herd? They're kind of like class 5 clingers, as far as if you turn, they're going to turn. So what exactly do you do to kind of shake them when it's time to hang up your helmet and go home and get a good night's rest? And where is home? There's a lot of unanswered questions, and I'm not sure that we really need the answer to them. I don't know logistically if I want to know how the Whisperers kind of live their lives. We did that with the Saviors, and we started to like them. I want the Whisperers to be like this evil, deplorable element that we know very little about, that they just show up, they sneak attack, and then they kind of fade back into the herd. I would prefer that personally. Ryan, considering the human element within the horde, and such as independent thought, its size, was the hero's escape a little too convenient, sort of like the Millennium Falcon off the Death Star in Star Wars New Hope?
Yeah, I guess so. It was a little convenient, but I guess it didn't bother me too much, especially in the beginning. We kind of knew it was going to happen, and I almost would rather we knew they were going to escape. I'd rather them get out and kind of hit the reset button than have play out a situation where we know they're going to find a way out. So I kind of feel like it played out fine. It didn't bother me too much the way it went down.
IG, after the element supplies was kind of blown on Jesus, they gave the good surprise to him. Everybody else kind of took the rest of the Whisperers down with ease. Do you think knowing that they're out there makes it easier to kill them?
Well, yes, it does make it easier to kill them. They can show up at any point, and they have the ability, it seems, to kind of guide herds to wherever they want them to go. So I think there's danger still present, because they can just get the herd moving in a direction, fall to the back of the herd, and let them take all of the brunt of whatever they're going to do. And really, that's when your guard starts to go down, because if you send a big enough herd at anybody, they're going to kill some for a while and then figure, oh, yep, there's no Whisperers here. The guard's going to start coming down, because walkers behave in a very specific way. They walk a certain way, they attack a certain way, and they're very easy to take down if you know what you're doing. And once that guard goes down, and if you just leave them alone long enough or throw enough things in there that now they've expended all of their ammunition, they've lost a few key people, because if you send large enough herds, they're going to lose some people. Someone's going to make a mistake, someone's going to get bit, something's going to happen. So it still ends up that, yeah, okay, it's easy to peg you out once they figure out what they're looking for, but they still have to figure out which ones are the walkers and which ones are the people, because that's what took Jesus down, is he didn't expect there to be a person there. And that is still one of the coolest things I've seen on the show in a long time, when Jesus got taken down by that walker.
Well, I think at the mid-season break, Ryan said, at that point, I really wish that we didn't know that there were Whisperers, that we didn't know that this this threat existed, because that would have been one of the biggest surprises ever on the show. Jesus kind of had that "I'm gonna get you sucker" swagger on. He's making real pronounced movements, not really worrying about recourse, and next thing you know, he's got a knife stuck up through him. Ryan, Negan breathed breathes the sweet breaths of freedom, steals a tomato, grabs a shovel, and heads on over to Michonne's townhouse. No one was home, and ominous music aside, if she was there, what do you think would have went down?
That's a good question. I like to think that Negan's changed, so maybe he would go in there and, kind of threaten her, like, look, I'm leaving. Don't come after me. But who knows? I don't know what his intent was. It appears that it seems to have changed. He seems genuine. He seems to, have kind of affection towards Judith. So, I'd like to think that he was there to be, up front and say, look, I'm out. But, who knows?
Yeah, what do you think, IG? Do you think he was there to case to pay a place for Lucille? Do you think he was there to say goodbye to Judith? Or was Michonne about to meet the business end of Lucille 2.0, the shovel version?
I think he was literally probably just kind of paying a little bit of respect to Judith. I think he gained a lot of respect for Carl early on. And then through some of that, actually gained quite a bit of respect for Rick, because Rick allowed him to survive. And then saw what they had built, saw what they had gone through. So I think he was there just to kind of say his silent goodbye to Judith, which, it says maybe he changed a little bit. Although, can a zebra really change its stripes? Is he really going to be fully changed, or is there ulterior motive? I'm always afraid, especially with characters like this, that there's going to be something else going on. And I'm almost hoping there is, because if he's just really turned into a house dog, and he's just going to sit on his cushion and do nothing, then what point is he there? Yeah, he can talk a good game, but we need action out of Negan. One way or another. Either he's going to join the good guys and still kind of be a jerk once in a while, or he's going to go rogue and start taking people out. Something needs to happen with him, though.
I was a little worried about it when I saw it. I did notice that it looked like he might have stole some of Rick's clothes, which really probably will piss Michonne off because she likes to seem to wear those. However, he reminds me a lot of Ted Bundy, just how charismatic he is, how people kind of fall for his lines, that big smile on his face all the time. And if anybody hasn't seen it yet, Netflix has a great documentary. I believe it's like 4 or 5 parts called The Ted Bundy Tapes. It's really worth a watch. Just some great stuff, though, as Judith catches Negan as he's about to scale the wall, and the chemistry between Kaylee Fleming and JDM is off the charts. Negan promises he won't hurt anybody, not ever again, even if they try to hurt him. Ryan, she's buying it. Are you? Can someone like Negan change his ways?
I've bought that he's changed his ways. I actually do think he's, for a number of reasons, I think, his performance kind of is subtle enough and kind of nuanced enough that I do think he genuinely feels some kind of remorse for how he was, and I think he's genuinely changed. But I also think just practically, like, with all the changes, Negan's going to be, one of the featured characters and probably a good guy. So I think for a lot of those reasons, I think Negan has changed and will kind of have to change. But I do think he's genuinely a different, better person. And I don't know that he won't harm somebody ever again, but I at least think his intentions will be more pure, I guess.
And it honestly looks like they are taking a sharp turn from the comic books. If anything, there's a possibility that Negan is just a good guy now, and that he wants to be part of a community and behind some walls, and he's not going to go rogue and kind of mix up with the Whisperers. But we'll have to see where that kind of takes us. IG Tara's setting up a search party for Michonne and company when Luke comes over and offers a little bit of help. Just in general, what do you think of Dan Fogler's character, Luke? And isn't he just kind of a likable guy?
He's a very likable guy, but, one of the things that I think about his character, I like him a lot, and he's got a place, but I don't think his place should be to go out and do missions or rescue or gather. I think his place is to kind of keep art and other things alive, because he's a music teacher, and music teachers aren't well known for being athletes, and you're going to put him out there and get in trouble. And we just watched Eugene, who's not known for being an athlete, throw his leg out of socket doing next to nothing. And what's going to be worse than Eugene, who is an aforementioned genius, is sending a music teacher out to try and do the same kind of shit. I love the character, and I think that it's a necessary thing in here, because not everybody needs to be a sword-wielding or crossbow-wielding badass. You need some some color characters. You need some people to bring other things into a community, and I think he's a perfect fit for that. I don't know if I'm a huge fan of putting him out in the middle of danger on a regular basis, because I just think that in a tactical sense, in a military type sense, that's not the person I would send out. You don't go in and grab your corps of typists and send them out into foxholes.
Yeah, well, we kind of saw that with Umpum in Saving Private Ryan, right? Send the translator out there, and meanwhile you're getting stabbed in the next room and he won't come out. The difference between Luke and Eugene, at least, is that Luke's not cowardly. He's just out of his depth out in the field. He's not that guy. He wants to be, because he wants to be accepted and he wants to be liked and respected amongst the new community he just joined, but definitely not an ass kicker yet. But hopefully maybe he survives long enough where we can see him to become one. Ryan, Daryl and company get back to their horses and are headed back to Hilltop. Some actual real solid acting from both Norman and Denai as they discuss the loss of Jesus, the search for Rick's remains. Can the strong, dirty, silent type handle the increased workload and become a leading man?
I'm not sold on it, only because I don't think that it's not his character, and so I think it's going to be a challenge. I don't know how they write it so that you give him, to be a leading man, he's going to need, he's going to need to show more range. He's going to need more lines and kind of be a little bit more present. And I don't know that makes sense for the character. It's not that he can't do it as an actor, but if he does, is it going to make sense? Is it going to work for the story? And I think they kind of set the table for it by kind of Michonne telling him that he has to be a leader during the episode, and they need him, but I just don't know how much I buy it. So I guess we'll see how it plays out and how the writing goes for it. But it's a little tricky to kind of slot him into that spot. I don't know that they've done the appropriate character work for that to really make sense and work.
Well, IG, you and I are definitely not Norman Reedus marks. We're not huge fans, but what did you think of his performance in his increased workload over the course of the episode?
I think he's kind of hitting the right note of where he needs to be, and it's not so much that he has to stand on a soapbox and rally the troops or anything. Kind of a lead by example, kind of be strong, silent type, little bit of man with no name from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. He doesn't need to be a Rick, a Michonne, a Negan. He doesn't need to be able to stand up and speak to get people to do things. Now, someone on the show is going to have to, but it doesn't have to be Daryl. And you're right. I'm okay if at any point they decide to kill Daryl, and I think it would actually be a good storyline to do it right. But he's doing a good job. I mean, Norman Reedus is a good actor, and he needs to stay in his wheelhouse, and they were right there on the edge of where he needs to be in this last episode. He had some very good emotion and some very good things going on, and I bought it. It did very well.
Yeah, I liked his performance over the course of the episode. And one thing I did like that showed a little bit of character growth was when Michonne did make a request out of him. He's like, why is this being left up to me? You've never seen that from Daryl before. He just kind of always blindly shook his head and, all right, I'll go take one for the team. And finally he's starting to question, why am I doing this? Why is the dirty work always left to me? So I kind of like that. But, we're getting to the point with The Walking Dead where we're in the 13th inning and you've used most of your players and you're looking down at your bench and you only got one or two guys left. You just traded a couple talented guys over to Fear with Austin Emilio and Lenny James. And it's just somebody on the show is going to have to step up. So if it's Norman, I'm happy for Norman to keep, get the game-winning hit and, we all enjoy the rest of the season. If it's someone else, then it's someone else. But somebody on the cast is going to have to take the reins and kind of go.
I'm unhappy about the lack of King Ezekiel so far in this season for the most part. We've had him a little bit, not near enough. I think he's somebody that could very well, at least from a vocal standpoint, lead a lot of what's going on, because both when he's doing his D&D acting and when he's actually being himself are both pretty strong and well done characters, and that's where I think the lack is so far, is not enough King Ezekiel.
You're really right. Like he's next to JDM and to a large extent even more so, he's the most charismatic person maybe in the history of the show. And I think that, even with with Negan, like he's charismatic, but you you can't have too much Negan. I think that's an issue where I feel like Ezekiel has never been given really appropriate time, and he's somebody who you absolutely has the charisma and the acting chops to lead the show or to be among move him up from like the B team to the A team if he's the guy, but for some reason I don't know if it's not confidence or if they don't have the right storylines for him, but I feel like Ezekiel's kind of been he's one of the guys where he really should be more prominent, especially when you're in a situation where you're trying to replace some of your big hitters.
Well, I have a feeling that we're kind of staying away from the Kingdom because they're ramping up for this fair thing that nobody really cares about. And if we are going by source material, there isn't a lot of minutes of King Ezekiel left on the screen. So, at some point, Catherine Zeta-Jones is going to be on the screen yelling "Time's up," because the lifespan of the king, in the comics at least, isn't much longer than the Whispers. I hope they don't go that way. And if you look at the one community that really hasn't been impacted really, really harshly from all this nonsense with the Saviors, it really was the Kingdom. Now, mind you, they lost most of the B and C team, but the A team is still there. You still got Jerry, Carol, and King Ezekiel, and we didn't show them once in the episode. And that's why I kind of enjoy the Game of Thrones storytelling a little bit more, because they always hit on every part of the story, just about every single episode. So you're at least filled in like, oh, what's going on with Jon Snow now? A glance over to the Kingdom for him and Carol and see what they're up to really would have helped the episode a little bit. IG, interesting scrum on the covered bridge. Awesome setting for it. Daryl comes up with a great idea of shooting them in the leg and making the walkers do the work for him. But much like Nick figuring out camouflaging yourself in walker blood on Fear, was it a little too early in the game for this type of discovery?
I don't know. I think there's more to be said about what the Whisperers are capable of and what they're doing. I'm hoping that they aren't trying to burn through the Whisperer storyline so fast that we're going to be done with it in 7 more episodes. But it's possible. They've made decisions on The Walking Dead before that I don't agree with. Rick not being here anymore being one of them. Carl not being here anymore is another big one. But, who am I to say? They pay them guys a lot of money to come up with stories. I'm hoping that this is just a small chink in their armor versus a major player in the rest of the series. Because if this is really how they're going to find the Whisperers every time they come across any walkers, I think it's going to be pretty lame.
Yeah, that's what I was saying with the question is like, you really, no pun intended, took the teeth out of the Whisperers by doing that, because first off, if you get a close view, they don't look like the walkers, and I don't know if we're supposed to suspend disbelief, but you can definitely tell that, between the Whisperers and the walkers, if you look at them close enough. And if we're going to do this every single time they're in a herd, well, you effectively just nullified your enemy. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I agree. I think I think there has to be more to it. So I think it makes sense as a strategy, but regardless, like if you hit him in the head, I don't know, it's weird, because if you to mimic a walker, it means you have to put yourself in harm's way and you have to make yourself a target, a slow moving target. So to me, there has to be more to the Whisperers attack than just being amongst a herd and being able to catch people off guard. So I'm not as thrown off by it. It doesn't bug me as much. I'm just assuming, now look, if their attack is always like that, then it's dumb. But I think there's got to be more to it, because it just doesn't make sense. And I think it's an easy strategy once you think. It's one of those things, like, I don't know that I would have thought about it in the heat of the moment, but someone like Daryl is quick enough and savvy enough and kind of in that situation he's in his element, and I can totally buy Daryl coming up with that. And yeah, so I think there's something else that we just haven't seen. I hope there is. Maybe you've seen in the comics, but I feel like there's more that we'll discover as the show moves forward.
One of the things I loved about the battle when the jig was up, the remaining 2 Whisperers decide that they're going to make a beeline turnaround and start wandering back off the bridge. And it was just funny to see a walker-like creature just go, maybe not. And they turn around to be confronted by Michonne. IG, they capture a young female Whisperer and bring her back to Hilltop. Now, this community is upset and angry over the death of Jesus, aren't we all? Is this hang first and ask questions later type community where you want to be in custody on The Walking Dead?
That would be no. That would be a bad place to be. And I think the only reason people aren't getting hung more often is because Maggie is off doing whatever Maggie's off doing. It's a real convenient way to write her off the show, but not write her off the show. Like, I think the plan is to have her on a couple of episodes later in the season or next season. I'm not a big fan of the rate at which we're losing main cast members, because the ones they're going to leave us with aren't going to be enough. But yeah, here at the Hilltop, they don't screw around. So you push too many buttons too many times, and yeah, you're going to be at the end of a rope. So I don't think that they really realize the depth that they're in when they end up there.
Yeah, Hilltop they pre-hang you when you show up in the community. I mean, they didn't even have this poor girl in her cell yet, and Brett Butler's like, I'll get my rope. We'll string her up. Terry, you're going to have to do something about this. It was really, really kind of brutal, where, first off, she looks like a young teen, maybe 16, 17 years old, and Brett's ready to string him up. But meanwhile, her husband tried to stab Maggie to death. And I don't know if you guys noticed this or not, but ABC, those bastards, decided to run Whiskey Cavalier commercials during The Walking Dead. It's like, yeah, we stole one of your actresses, and if the show makes it, she'll never be back. I really, that annoyed the shit out of me as a fan of The Walking Dead.
Yeah, I saw that. That was very disheartening, the fact that they put it on during this show. And I know that what they're hoping is that they can find Lauren Cohen fans and draw them into their new show and hope that some of her star power will get some additional rating. But it was dirty. That's dirty pool, man.
Ryan, let's put yourself in the shoes of Eugene. I mean, he's becoming the George Costanza of The Walking Dead. He confesses his love to a girl, Rosita, only for her to run off, vomit, and then reveal she's pregnant by Sadiq within earshot of him. How badly did you feel for Eugene in that moment? And should he just read the book, She's Not That Into You?
Yeah, that was pretty rough. I mean, she's pregnant by one guy while dating another guy. And yeah, that's tough. It's like Eugene just couldn't have a worse time. But yeah, hopefully it, I don't know, who knows how this is going to work out. But yeah, it had to be a rough moment for Eugene.
Well, there's got to be some awkward, weird, kind of half-smart Dungeons and Dragons playing video game nerd girl somewhere in the apocalypse that's just going to go over the moon for Eugene. And he just hasn't found her yet. And there have been some candidates, but they've all been a little bit nutty. Maybe one of these new girls that comes around will just be totally into the mullet, and I'm hoping. I think that Eugene is setting his standards in a place where they don't belong. He needs to find a girl more his speed.
Well, that's most geeks, though. We go with what's familiar. We try to date our friends because we can't kind of go out and get that girl on the bar or at the bar or on Tinder. We're shy, we're awkward, and you kind of try to build the friendship into a relationship rather than the other way around. I feel for Eugene, and it's not helping much with this unlikable Rosita problem. She's also on a clock as far as the source material, and I would hate to see her kind of go out being as unliked as she is. I mean, being with Eugene really might draw the fans kind of towards her and make her a lot more fan-friendly, a lot more interesting, a lot more fun. But she is kind of making the rounds. There isn't that many guys left in the zombie apocalypse, at least in these community, and she's slept with most of them. Ryan, Negan finds out that breaking up is hard to do, but starting over is even harder as he returns to an abandoned sanctuary, and the reality that Judith might be right sets in. There is nothing out there for him. Where does Negan go from here? I mean, and did you kind of feel for him for all that he's lost? When all this started, he was on top of the world. He had hundreds of people behind him and dozens of wives to sleep with. And he came back and Sanctuary was just in ruins. And it looked like it may have had a leaking problem.
It's hard to feel bad for somebody, but I think we're human. So you see, you kind of see somebody when they're broken down, and you do feel for him because he had everything, and his own. I talk a lot about Rick's hubris, but it was his own that kind of did him in eventually. Like, I think he just underestimated the resolve of everybody, and his own power and his own people, and he paid for it. He paid the price. again, I think he has kind of a redemption arc going on right now. And so I think this was part of his redemption arc. He needed to kind of see this. He needed to go through this and kind of be, this is maybe his lowest point, in a weird way, that he wanted out, and he probably all he thought about for 5 years was, I got to get out. I have to leave. And then he gets out and he realizes that's it. That, the world is different. There's nothing there. And so to have to make the decision to go back is pretty tragic. But again, it kind of hopefully is part of his own character growth and development into, the hero, I guess, he's going to likely turn out to be.
Yeah, IG, did you feel that Negan was almost thrown to the dogs in this episode? No pun intended. As far as where he started out, where we saw him the first time. I mean, he even kind of went back to that area where he killed Glenn and Abraham. It was really a journey of redemption, but what did you feel and how did you feel about his acting?
Well, the acting was strong. The writing, not quite as much. I don't know why they felt that they needed to spend time making sure that Negan got another leather jacket. Like that somehow took priority over trying to build who he was and who he's going to become. But that's what it looked like they did, because that was the important thing for him to do. And then he gets chased by dogs. But his reaction and how he still showed like he's a little bit timid. He's not just big badass Negan anymore. He's got a little bit behind him where he's like, maybe I'm not set for all this. The acting was strong, and I just wish that they had written better for it, because JDM can act the hell out of some stuff here, and he can really chew up scenery and do well. And even with the subpar writing of this portion of this episode, it was well done enough that it still kept me intrigued. So yeah, kudos to Jeffrey Dean Morgan for putting something that really didn't have much meat on the bones to make it interesting, to make it watchable, to make me still intrigued. With the exception of he didn't need another leather jacket.
At least they gave him a much lighter leather jacket to kind of tour around with. So there's that. And there wasn't an ascot, which is kind of good. He didn't get the Negan cosplay kit to perfection. It was close.
I kind of like the misdirect. It's funny because I'm the one that's always ragging on the writing in the show. Actually, in this case, I like the misdirect. Obviously, like when he, you're in this completely trashed, store, and there just happens to be a leather jacket that's kind of ridiculous. But, that being said, I kind of like it. To me, it was a misdirect. You have Negan, he leaves, he finds a leather jacket. He's back to being Negan. He gets to the sanctuary. He's whistling. He puts things back together. You actually, for a moment, think, oh wait, maybe he's gonna make a go of it. Maybe he's gonna try. Even all the while, he is acting the shit out of the scenes, because he really does show, that he's not the same person he was, when he ran the sanctuary. And you can see that, as much as he kind of wanted it internally, he just wasn't the same person. And I think he did a great job acting that and showing that and showcasing that kind of fear, the fear of the dogs and being a little timid and so I guess long way for me to say it. I liked that aspect of it, so I kind of didn't mind the leather jacket. It was heavy-handed and thrown in there, but I like that you kind of had the feeling that, oh wait, maybe he's going to be Negan again, and it's like, nope, he's not.
We were wrong. We all said that he wouldn't be in that cell for an episode to 3 episodes, and it's been much, much longer than that. So I'm happy to see him out, and I'm happy to see him part of the show, but he acted his ass off. The writing might have not been up to par, but he acted his ass off in those scenes. I'm a big fan of someone's face telling the story, and you can see him feeling through this new world that he's been away from anywhere from 5 to 7 years. Step by step, you could just see the pain and reality start to set in, that things aren't the way they used to be. Ryan Michonne apparently has the power to appoint not only Lydia's interrogators, but the new leadership at Hilltop. She names Daryl as Jesus' successor. Number one, was he the right person for the job, or the only person left? And was the interrogation of Lydia a game of good cop, bad cop between Daryl and Henry?
I don't think it was an intentional game of good cop, bad cop, to answer the last question. I think Henry's, he's young. He's a little maybe idealist and naive, and maybe genuinely. But I think Daryl was going overboard, maybe, but we don't know what's going on with the whispers and how scared she really is. It's weird that Michonne had that ability to appoint him. He's not a leader. He's he's like your best soldier. He's he's the guy that can do everything, but he's not a leader. And he's never shown that, and his character has never shown that. So, and he spent the last 5 years as a nomad. So, it doesn't make sense, for her to tell him, you need to be here. They need you. They need somebody with your skills. Great. But, to be the guy just doesn't make sense because they haven't built his character for that. So, that to me is a little bit of a stretch.
Well, and they kind of left him in charge at Sanctuary, and we all saw how that kind of panned out. What do you think, IG? Do you think that, number one, he's leadership material, and number two, do you think Henry was in on the whole, we're going to argue and then I'll make friends with him after Daryl leaves?
Well, there are different kind of leaders, and the kind of leader he would be effective as is like, I guess, from my military background, he'd be a fire team leader. You're going to send him out on missions to accomplish a goal. So he's going to lead a team to go do a task. Whatever that task is fine, but you can't just kind of say, okay, well, now you're in charge of this area. Make it work, because that's not what he's going to do. He's not going to thrive at that. That's not a Daryl strong point. You need somebody who can lead on their own, who can recognize who are the other leaders, because you're going to need a group of leaders to do this properly, because you're going to need people to lead the farming group and the blacksmithing group and different things. And then it's kind of a chain of command up to the one big leader who's making the major decisions. And that cannot be Daryl. That's not in his wheelhouse. That's not in his character's wheelhouse. And it's not that he couldn't act that well or anything. If we're talking about Norman Reedus, we're talking about Daryl. And Daryl has never shown the ability to do those things. It's a bad mistake to leave him in charge of anything that isn't dog, a crossbow, or a motorcycle. Those are the things he can be in charge of.
Judith sees Negan, and as promised, she shoots. Great back and forth, and he admits that she was right. There's nothing out there for me. With so much going wrong with the show, Ryan, can the relationship between these two save it?
I don't know if it can save it, but I will say that they're highlights of the show for me. I actually really love Judith. I think I forget the girl's name that plays her, but she's great.
Kelly Flanagan.
Yeah, she's great, and they have great chemistry together, and she might be what they wanted Carl to be. Like, if this show does go on for another 5 years or 10 years or however long, which I don't know what's the best idea in the world, but she might. I was never the biggest fan of Carl, and I felt like he was just coming into his own when they offed him, but I think she's got that it factor that he didn't have, whether it's an acting thing or the writing for him or whatever it was. I think she's got something that he didn't have, and so if the show goes on for a while, I think she may be that character, and maybe in the long run, if they're able to figure stuff out, she may prove that they made the right choice in getting rid of him and kind of giving her a chance to shine. So I think I don't know if it can save the show, but if the show succeeds, it may be on the backs of them as characters and their relationship.
IG, for all intents and purposes, it looked like that he was coming back to surrender and go back in the cell. If he does that, do you believe that he stays in there long, or will he be joining Alexander as part of the community?
I think the fact that they're going to find out that he got out and that he came back may very well get him a shot at redemption and doing something outside of the cell. I'm hoping anyway, because, with Maggie, who is the biggest proponent of either kill him or keep him in that hole, off doing something else, why not give him a shot to help? He's a proven leader. His leading methods were a little bit awkward and not great, but he was still able to lead effectively. Give him something that he can do. Give him an area that he can try and work his magic to get people to do their best. I think that they're going to let him be out.
I think they will let him out, but I think it'll be out of necessity. I think there'll be some kind of war, some kind of a battle or situation where his body and maybe his leadership is needed, but I don't think they'll trust him. Even in this situation, like if I'm Michonne or Gabriel, okay, he escaped and there was nothing there, and so in this case, you know what, he has a place to sleep, warm place to sleep and food. It's better than nothing. And so, the cynical part of me would think, okay, he's just making that decision because there's nothing else. versus trusting him to lead. So I think he will get out, but it'll be because they need him, not because they've decided, you know what, he's a good guy, he left and came back.
It's the hero they have, not the hero that they want. I kind of look at it another way. I think that Negan is too much of a shit-talking, sarcastic pill for Michonne to swallow. And when they find out that he wants back in, I have a feeling that she'll boot him the hell back out. And she'll be like, no, this is what you want. We're going to give you the opposite of that. I hope he doesn't stay in the cell too much longer. Jeffrey Dean Morgan is probably the top 3 remaining actor left on the show. And Negan has something. He is something. We're not looking at third stringers trying to carry scenes when he's in it. The guy is a bona fide movie star. IG, the trail ends for Alton and Luke as they come face to face with Alpha. Will either of them make it back alive? Your thoughts on the final scene, the episode, and your rating.
So I think they'll both make it back alive. I think they'll both be sent back with a message, and the message may be, let my daughter go. But there'll be some form of message. And you know what? That last scene creeped me the hell out. When they walk and they see the walkers ambling, and then one just stops and they look to the side and another one standing there, look to the other side, another one standing there. They're basically surrounded. And that's something that they've never run into before, because not only that, like these guys, it's their first encounter with anything like this, because they crossed paths. They left when the other ones were coming back, so they're not aware of what's happening. They're not aware that Jesus was killed and how. This is really kind of shaping up a little bit. Now, the problem is we didn't get really anything of Alpha other than one sentence. And I'm just tired of waiting for Alpha and Beta to come around and make things happen. I really want this to kick off. They're kind of doing the slow burn into this whole Whisperer timeline. And I was really hoping for it to move faster. Now, that being said, it might start moving really fast really soon. And maybe they'll burn so fast that they'll burn it out. But right now, they're just moving too slow. I still enjoyed the episode. A lot of good acting, a lot of good things happening. But, they need to do something else. Again, the chess pieces need to move on the board a little more frequently to keep us all interested. I'm going to give this episode a 7. I still enjoyed it. They got a lot of room to improve, though.
I've come to like my own not revelation, but I've changed kind of how I approach The Walking Dead. So I kind of spent the last couple of years looking at it, comparing it to like a Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad or kind of some of these kind of genre shows that kind of are prestige shows, and I just think The Walking Dead's not quite that anymore. I think because they go for more quantity over quality, we end up with this problem where instead of, if this was an 8-episode season, they could have gotten a ton of great stuff in and not felt like they were kind of slowly dragging their feet. But like it's kind of old school TV where we're going to get 20 episodes and just things drawn out, and we get a couple of big episodes here and there, and I kind of have to approach it like that. And especially now with all the new characters, it just feels a little bit like a soap opera. So I think kind of have to look at it from a little bit of a different lens and not get so angry with some of their decisions, because it can be the most frustrating show in the world. It can be the best show, one of the best shows in the world at times, but it can also be the most frustrating. So with that in mind, I'm kind of going to try to be a little less harsh on the show. I think this episode actually, the final scene was really cool. I think I like what they're doing with the Whisperers, visually, and kind of they're really getting the kind of the episode, the move when Jesus dies, and the end of the scene is really cool. I don't know how long they'll be able to get away with that, with the kind of really cool, almost horror movie like kind of scenes. It really looks cool. It's kind of scary and it kind of badass. But I don't know how long they get away with that until we really need to know who the hell are the Whisperers and why are they so terrifying, and why have I been hearing so much about them and how they're this awful, crazy, foe. So I mean, this episode again, it is The Walking Dead. It's a lot of kind of slow moving, but I think it was saved by Jeffrey D. Morgan's performance. I think he did a great job. He and Judith, again, great chemistry. Wasn't thrilled by everything else, but you know what? Look, it's the first episode of the second half of the season, so you can never expect too much. I just hope that we do get some some highlights, and that they don't meander into the the fare too slowly. So, I'd say it's a solid 7, some good stuff, some not so good stuff, but I'm not hate watching it right now.
As slow as this episode went, and I'm going to say this, we've got to stop with the mid-season breaks. It kills any momentum a show has, and then they've got to build it all back up in half of a season, and I don't like it. I'm with you, Ryan. A few episodes less would be great, but we don't need a 2-month break in between shows. And in that 2-month break, the impact of Jesus dying was really kind of lost. And I don't know if they were carrying a dummy around or that was Tom Paine, but that must have been one hell of a last day at work if it was, because he's on camera for all 5 minutes with people carrying him around. But hints of the truth really definitely came out amongst Lydia's deceptions. We were always going to kill you. Walls don't keep you safe. Places like this never make it. We've seen it time and time again. The Whispers are a real threat. But I'm going to tell you this. My new friend Dan dies, I'm definitely rioting. It was a slow opening episode. We only have 7 left to pick up some sort of momentum. I loved the Judith Negan dynamic, and I can't wait for more. She's immeasurably more likable than Carl is, and every scene she is in, I enjoy the hell of. She's quickly becoming one of my favorite characters. I'm going to give Adaptation a 6 in hopes that they kind of pick up the pace. I'm definitely going to miss Tom Paine. Hopefully Angela Kang and company can right the ship, and we'll have a great rest of the season.
And that's it, the end of episode 100 of the Cinik Radio Podcast. I'm Igrihe, here with your host and my good friend Cinik and the amazing Ryan George. We've had a great time bringing you the past 100 episodes, and we plan on bringing you at least 100 more. We hope you're going to stick around for the ride. And until next time, send your comments, questions, concerns, and any crazy news stories from your neck of the woods to CinikRadio@gmail.com. Find us on the internet at CinikRadio.com. Look for us on Facebook at Facebook.com/CinikRadio. Find us on Twitter at CinikRadio, and you can find us on Instagram at CinikRadio. Head on over to tpublic.com and get your own Cinik Radio Podcast gear, t-shirts, cups, mugs, hats, anything your little heart could possibly desire, and you can support the show. We appreciate all the support we've gotten from you guys over these past 100 episodes, and we can't wait to keep bringing it to you. Until next time, don't get captured.
Follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and at CinikRadio.com. Available for download on iTunes.